Kia ora nau mai, welcome to The Elephant. I'm Miriam Makapo.
And I'm Mark Kreisel. There's an elephant in the room and we need to talk about it.
When I was pulled into detention, the first thing they said to me was, "We both know why you're here."
Why are you sending people home for having photos on their phone? Why are you going through people's computers and sending them back to the country that they came from? What exactly is the threat there?
I mean, if I invite you to my house for dinner and you come in and you kick my dog and insult my wife, I'm going to kick you out, right?
We're not far away from a time where, yes, you are either arrested or detained, possibly without due process, for simply speaking out against Donald Trump.
I'll be honest with you, I don't care if you come or not.
Today, we are talking about travel and travel to America in particular. Land of the free, or is it?
Yes, well, some might say more land of the flea. Get out of there. On this episode of The Elephant, we're asking, should we be afraid to travel to America?
A crazy question, right? But these days, there are Kiwis who are literally too scared to talk because they're frightened of being cancelled at the US international border.
Today, the Trump administration reports it has revoked more than 6,000 student visas this year.
It's no secret that Donald Trump's administration is cracking down at the border.
I spoke to my attorney about it, and, she kind of said, you'll be fine. Your paperwork's, all valid.
It wasn't, and US immigration authorities threw Kiwi Sarah Shaw into a crowded Texas detention centre for 3 weeks with her 6-year-old son, Isaac, because of a mix-up over her visa.
If I needed to go to the bathroom, Isaac was there yelling at me outside the stall. If I wanted to take a shower, he had to come with me. So it was we were completely joined to the hip.
Oh, it's just so crazy. More and more Kiwi are worrying about that tap on the shoulder from a US customs officer.
Not because they've done anything wrong, but because of what you believe.
Man, it's surreal to see this. MFAD has issued warnings to Kiwi travellers to the US. Now, we are used to seeing this, brother, in China or for North Korea, but our mates in America don't want us?
Yep, that's right. Since COVID, most places are back on the travel map, except America, where 10% fewer Kiwis are visiting this year. And it's not just because of long flights or a weak dollar. Here's Dave Coombs from House of Travel.
I think with the political situation in the States at the moment, there'll be a portion of customers who are really motivated and make their decisions based on what's happening there. If you've got something controversial from an American perspective on your social media pages, delete it before you get there. That's just common sense. Check what it says on nzherald.co.nz. Talk to an agent and travel safely and be informed.
There's a growing fear that the Trump administration's immigration policies have made it dangerous to travel with a dissenting view. So here's Van Jackson, Professor of International Relations at Wellington's Victoria University and a former member of the Obama administration.
If you have any track record online of criticizing the current regime in America, or if you have spoken out on behalf of Palestinian rights or lives, any of that stuff is grounds for being detained at the border and interrogated.
And people from around the world, including New Zealanders, are being detained, interrogated, and even deported.
MFAT said since November last year, 38 Kiwis have required their assistance because of difficulties at the US border. That compares with only 9 the previous year. The reasons given are vague, but a number of high-profile cases have come down to anything that doesn't fit with a Trump worldview.
When I was pulled into detention, the first thing they said to me was, "We both know why you're here." And I said that I had no idea why I was there.
Australian writer and photographer Alistair Kitchen was detained and interrogated for 12 hours at Los Angeles Airport in June.
And they said it's because of what you wrote online about the protests at Columbia University. Now, I was a student at Columbia when the pro-Palestinian protests broke out in April of 2024, and I had written about those protests in a series of posts to my blogs. What I wrote was pretty inconspicuous, pretty moderate, pretty nothing special. It was clearly enough, though, to raise some flags in the US government.
Alistair was eventually deported and sent back to Australia after the customs officers found evidence he'd bought marijuana in New York.
I lived in the US for 6 years where you can buy marijuana legally in New York. But they like to have the drug angle in the back pocket just in case, because, it gives them justification and pretext. In this case, pretext for keeping out someone on speech grounds and for their political views.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade has updated its travel advice, warning that laptops, phones and other electronic devices may be searched at the US border.
Here's Professor Van Jackson again.
If you don't turn over your devices and if you don't answer their questions. So they're allowed to interrogate you and hold you in a room at the airport indefinitely.
Both the University of Otago and the University of Auckland have issued cautions to their staff advising them to prepare for heightened security when travelling to the United States.
Over the past month, I've spoken to at least a dozen academics, many of them too scared to show their face or even go public because they're worried that their views or even their social media posts could see them flagged. Also feeling exposed is another academic who's now joining us in the studio, Dr. Ciara Kremen of Auckland University, a sociology lecturer.
That's correct, yeah.
How do you feel about travelling to America at the moment?
It's like I feel everywhere. I'm exposed everywhere because everywhere I'm other, I stand out from the crowd. So when I go to the United States, recently it's actually quite troubling because there's so much hostility towards transgender people there, and actually from where I'm from in Britain as well. So I'm nervous, regardless of any sort of border issues.
What did you do the last time you visited America?
Well, I went to the United States earlier this year for a conference that I booked before Trump got into power and all the kind of changes that took place soon after he got into power. And it was an important one for me to go to. So I made a decision, which is actually quite undignified and degrading in a way, which was to present as a man.
Would you go back?
Absolutely not. And I've got a book coming out later this year, and I was going to go on a book tour in the United States. I've got friends there, various gigs that I could do. And I just think it's too much of a risk. And it's not just being a trans woman, it's being somebody who's quite political, and my work makes no bones about where I'm coming from on various issues. Quite antithetical to Trump and the Republican Party. I'd love to go back one day, but I don't think under the Trump regime it's too worrying the way he's whipped up hatred towards trans women and various minorities. It's not so much even that I'm afraid of how security would behave towards me, but how people in everyday life would behave towards me. I think he gives license for people to be openly transphobic.
You're speaking out. Are you concerned about the consequences of saying these things publicly?
I'm exposed to people that are very hostile to trans women, and in that sense, of course, I'm vulnerable. But at the same time, this is what I do. I can't do otherwise, and I don't want to cower in the face of that kind of prejudice and that kind of bigotry. But it does concern me, and I even speaking now that some people will be watching this who are very hostile towards trans women, will be mocking me and no doubt posting on this quite hateful comments. But
what would you say to them?
Get over yourselves. There's more important things in life than going on about trans women. I mean, global warming, genocide in Palestine. Where do we start? Trans women, the least of it.
Genocide in Palestine. That probably just that comment
red
with
flag,
you.
Red flag.
Yeah, exactly. I just open my mouth and I'm being controversial. So.
It is really tricky, and we acknowledge that. And thank you for coming in and sharing your story. We just don't know what's going to happen at that border, and I'm glad that you don't have any particular need to go to it anytime soon.
Thank you. Yeah.
So is it just academics that are scared, or is anyone who has a counter view to the Trump administration? We're joined by Simon Hankinson from the Heritage Foundation in Washington and Stephen Young, Professor of Law at Otago University in Dunedin.
And with us in studio, we have Zane Wedding, who is an activist no Ngāti Kuri, Ngāti Piki Aoia. Kia ora.
Kia
Lovely
ora.
to see you all. Thank you for joining us. I want to start with you, Simon. America's not sounding too friendly at the moment.
Well, the idea of enforcing immigration law is not new. It was normal for Democratic presidents, including Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. There's not been, in my lifetime, I'm pushing 60, a president of the United States who did not feel that they had an obligation under the Constitution as the lead executive to enforce immigration law. And now we're returning to standard law enforcement. And so for some people, that's a bit of a shock, but for most of us, it's a bit of a relief.
So it feels, though, a little bit like you're treating friends like foes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it doesn't necessarily feel safe to come to America at the moment. I'm going to come over to Zane to ask what your feelings are about this.
I know I wouldn't be welcome. First of all, I wouldn't go just on principle. But then there's this just logistical reason. America used to be the home of free speech. It used to be the place where we would go to because it is the innocent until proven guilty. But what he's talking about at the moment is like no due process. We're seeing that happen at the moment on the ground in America. And for somebody like me, I could go to the US, I could turn up there, they would demand to look at my phone. If I didn't let them, they'd send me home.
Simon, would you let someone like Zane, an activist, someone who is pro-Palestine, should he be allowed to come to America? He's protested publicly.
Well, look, I was just reviewing some of the news. I found that in 2 years ago, there were about 169,000 New Zealanders who traveled to the U.S. and back again. And last year was about 169,000 New Zealanders who traveled. The ministry of your ministry.
All of this seems completely irrelevant to me because it's not just about New Zealanders. It's the way that they're treating people from all across the world. It's not just about. I have to stand on an ethical foundation. And if they're treating like their closest neighbors the way that they're treating them at the moment, then I can't go there.
Why don't we take it to Stephen? Because Stephen's an American living in New Zealand. Stephen, what does it look like to you on the border? You keen to go back?
Am I keen to go back? Well, I have family and friends in the United States, and I'm from the US. So I'm also not a particularly vulnerable person. So I will travel back to the United States. I do have the same ethical concern that Zane has, and I think his position is very understandable. Simon has said that they're just looking to enforce border controls and immigration. I think that sort of underplays what's new about the Trump administration and what they're doing. They're massively, I think, building up border policies and border enforcement in ways that previous governments really haven't done. So this is new. But I do know that there's a lot of people, especially academics or activists, who are incredibly uncomfortable with the United States right now and don't want to visit and won't visit the United States until the United States starts to act more like the leader and respecter of rights that it used to be.
It's just very hard to take it seriously because there's no impact on the number of people traveling.
Well, yes, there is.
Travel back and forth.
The numbers are down by 10%.
I flew into Australia 25 years ago, and I got grilled by a customs guy about, did I have any fresh fruit? I was coming from Fiji. Did I have an apple? It turns out I had an apple in my bag, and I eventually remembered that, and I gave him the apple. And he said, why are you coming to the United States? Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? And I said, and I thought to myself, what the hell I want to do because I'm an American and I'm in my own country. But, I realized the guy was kind of having a hard day, forgot that he was talking to an American citizen, not a visitor, and I answered his questions.
We're kind of comparing apples with prison sentences here for people. And the one thing that we should speak into is there's no due process. It's no due process for some of the people who are being deported and some of the people who are just coming in, showing their phone. There may be a meme on it, and they're sent out of that country. One of the reasons that I could travel there in 2019 is because I had no worries about that happening to me. That is not the reality that we live in today. We're not talking about fruit. We're talking about the freedom of speech that people have as a person, and they don't feel safe to go into that country because of their viewpoints. It's not about carrying apples over the border. This is about the beliefs that people have. And you cannot criticize the current administration in America without threat of something coming back to you.
I mean, but at the same time, the US surely has the right, as any country does, to decide, well, we actually this is who we do and don't want here.
Totally. And we have that right as well. We can decide whether or not we want to go to America and not just as a nation, but as a world. Like, America is not the same place that we grew up to believe it was.
Somebody like Zane, I asked this before, who's an activist who has been pro-Palestine, has been to protests and been very involved in those. Would he be welcome in America?
Well, what is Zane coming to the United States to do? Because I know nothing about him. What is the purpose of his travel?
Would you join a pro-Palestine rally if you went to America?
100%. If I was in America, there is nothing that would stop me from protesting with the people. I would not only join the Palestine protests, I would join those people who are protesting what's happening with ICE at the moment. So 100% I would join those protests. But in the unlikely event that I was going to America, it would be to do nothing but be a law-abiding citizen. To be a law-abiding traveller.
So you're saying you would protest, but you would do it peaceably?
Of course,
right.
Of course.
And so on that basis then, Simon, would Zane be welcome?
That answers your question. I mean, if I invite you to my house for dinner and you come in and you kick my dog and insult my wife, I'm going to kick you out, right? Because those are my rules.
No. Zane said you would do it lawfully, lawful protest.
That's what I'm saying. If he's coming to the U.S. to go to some campus and protest, whatever cause he's for, he would be allowed to come in. Our rules are, if you endorse or espouse terrorism under our Immigration and Nationality Act,
but that's not what the reality of the ground is showing us. We are seeing people go into America, have their phones looked into, and simply from having memes, they are sent back to the country that they have come from. Not only that, sometimes they're detained for days. So,
give me an example.
It's a nice thing to say, but the reality does not match that.
I can give you an example, Simon. Alistair Kitchen, the Australian photographer, he was picked off straight off the plane. He'd written a couple of blogs about a Palestinian rally in New York when he'd been at Columbia. He was interrogated 5 floors down at LAX and then deported back to Australia. And
I don't know what they found on his phone. I don't know what he had said or done. But the line that you're looking for is very clear in our law. It is a line between endorsing and espousing terrorism. So if you say, I support Palestinian rights, that's fine. If you say, I support the destruction of the Israeli state, the destruction of capitalism, the destruction of the Western world, that crosses a line. If you say, I support Hamas killing Jews, then that is espousing and endorsing terrorism. So we have laws and we enforce them just like New Zealand and every other country.
If Zane came in then, Simon, to say, I am going to support a protest that supports the rights of Palestinians, full stop, would he be welcome?
Well, welcome is probably the wrong word. I mean, he would not be breaking any laws if he came in under that rubric, if that was his intent. You got to remember, we have 50 million people coming in and out of the United States in a given year. That's 10 times the population of New Zealand. So every single day, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people coming into the country with no issues whatsoever.
We have warning.
Yeah, but we've got a warning from our own Ministry of Foreign Affairs to be careful when you go into the States. It's a similar sort of warning you get if you go to North Korea, that you wipe your phones, things like that. Stephen, you were part of a conference in America. What was the impact of these types of policies on the people attending?
This is the Law and Society Association conference that's in Chicago every few years. I'm not one of the main organizers, but I was a person there organizing several of the panels there. And we have a network of international scholars. And I would say between 30 and 40% dropped out and decided not to attend in person because they didn't want to come to the United States. They didn't want to risk being stopped at the borders. They didn't want to be interrogated because they support Palestinians. They teach human rights. They teach international human rights law. And ethically, they don't agree with what the United States is doing. In addition to that, almost all of our Canadian colleagues decided not to attend because of Trump's very loose talk about making Canada into a 51st state. They see that as absolutely atrocious behavior, and they did not want to come to the United States. So I think that this is bad for business in the United States, but it's also bad for the free flow of ideas.
You know where someone was arrested and jailed for speech in the last couple of years? The United Kingdom, someone who tweeted something that was offensive, jailed for 2 years. Germany, a politician who tweeted facts from the federal government about crime committed by Afghans in particular, not in the United States.
And there's no denying at the moment the way things are trending. The key word at the moment is yet. Everyone can identify the exact fact that when we look at America, freedom of speech is being whittled away. We're not far away from a time where, yes, you are either arrested or detained, possibly without due process, for simply speaking out against Donald Trump. This is not what we understand American politics to operate like. So there is a slippery slope at the moment. The baseline is shifting, and it's not heading in the direction of more freedom of speech. It's heading in the opposite way.
I'll be honest with you. I don't care if you come or not. I mean, I was born in England. I moved here when I was 6. I've lived in 8 countries. I've visited 80 countries. When I go to other people's countries, I obey their laws. I obey their rules. When I go to Thailand, I don't insult the king. When I go to Australia, I don't bring an apple. When I go to China, I obey their rules and I don't insult the Communist Party.
Then why are people being deported, turning up with a photo in their phone and being sent? What is that? What is that exactly? You can turn up in America, have a photo on your phone, and be sent home. How is that constitutional? How does that meet the bar?
Due process simply means the process that is due to a particular person in a particular circumstance. So if you are arrested at the border for crossing in illegally, your due process is under the Immigration and Nationality Act, and that can be expedited removal under the 1996 amendments. If you are convicted of murder and you are an American citizen, you have a different due process. No one is.
Why are you sending people home for having photos on their phone? Why are you going through people's computers and sending them back to the country that they came from? What exactly is the threat there? What it is freedom of speech, and you don't want that. You don't want people criticizing the Trump government.
So if you arrive in the United States, and like I said, 99.99% of people out of the 50 million coming in and out every single day get in no problems. But every now and then they find someone, they have a little bit of a suspicion that this person maybe didn't tell the truth. They have something to hide. They have something in their baggage. They pull them aside. They ask them additional questions. And if they find anything that leads them to believe that this person is ineligible under the INA, then they reject them. They do not allow them to enter the country. And this happens very, very few times every day, but it happens according to the law and according to due process.
Part of the reason they're being removed is because the current jurisdiction believes that, protesting for Palestine is under this phrase of espousing or endorsing terrorism. And I think this goes back, Mark, to your point of, the United States looks like it's allowing people in that basically believe and support the things that Trump wants or that MAGA wants. I think that's right. It is, thinning out who's going to come to the United States and who's going to be allowed into the United States.
I really think we're in this really polarized environment now where people are freaking out and they're drawing conclusions.
I mean, if we're talking numbers, it's the only country in the world where foreign tourism is in decline. That's a $12 billion loss.
This month we had a total of 25,000 illegal alien encounters at our borders. In December of 2023, we had 375,000. So that is a drop of 95%. I would happily take that. If the price is that there's a drop in tourism for a couple months, I don't think that there's any connection between those two things. Whatever. I've heard this my whole career. I've been doing this. I was in the State Department for 25 years. After 9/11, no one's going to come to America because all of a sudden they're cracking down and they hate Muslims. People kept coming. They go to Disneyland. They come to New York City. They go to Miami. They go to our universities and our colleges. We're, a continent-sized country that's very welcoming to tourism, to business. And I think this is a storm in a teacup. I think it's not made any impact on New Zealanders coming to the United States, on people really from any other country coming to the U.S. for legitimate purposes.
Zane, what's your final thoughts on this debate, this discussion?
I mean, it's pretty evident to me that we're using numbers to kind of paint over a nice picture over something that the majority of people think and can recognize is really dark that's happening in America at the moment, whether that be the extremist views that are coming out from kind of the right wing at the moment that are permeating into Aotearoa and putting LGBTQ communities at risk, whether it be the community that I come from that are just 10 toes deep not going to America for all of the reasons that we are speaking about. Now, he can spout the numbers that he is saying, but the reality on the ground speaks very differently about the way most people are feeling about traveling to America at the moment, about the way that our government feels that we should feel like, whether it's a risk to go to America at the moment. He can say the numbers and speak the statistics, but what those statistics don't show us is the feeling that people are feeling in their hearts. And I can 100% tell you that America is not the place that we once thought it was. There is a reluctance to go there, and there is a corruption connected to that country at the moment that is undeniable.
I'll put it to you, Simon. Should we be scared of traveling to America?
Let me put it to you this way. I am not worried about being arrested in the United States for speaking the truth. I am concerned about going back to Britain, where I was born. I'm concerned about going to Australia. I'm concerned about going to Europe. And I haven't been to New Zealand in 25 years, but I'd be a little worried about going there because I'm afraid that my free speech would get me in trouble in those countries. I have absolutely no worries about this country. And I can tell you, Shane can come and come here and protest. And I guarantee you he's not going to be stopped at the airport. They're going to let him go and do his thing and, bang the drum in the middle of the street, and he can have a great time and go home and tell everybody about it.
I agree with Zane here quite a bit. I think if we look at the statistics, it's maybe not revealing the immensity of these problems. But I also probably agree a little bit with Simon here that, few people are probably going to be stopped because people are going to stop coming. And maybe Simon considers that a big win. But I think we also need to think about this is not just about border policies. This is about a lot of things that the Trump administration is doing. So they're withholding funds from major universities around things that universities are doing. They're trying to coerce law firms into doing the things that they want them to do. These are terrifying acts for people that care about open discussion and a free flow of ideas. So it's not just about borders, and it's not just about traveling places. And for people, that look like Simon and I, maybe traveling to the States isn't a bad thing, or it's not that scary. But if you can imagine traveling someplace and being worried, I think you can see why people are not going to be traveling to the United States now.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We so appreciate your time. We appreciate the different perspectives that you've brought to the table, and we think this will be very valuable as people make their calls about whether to travel to America. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa. So, brother, thoughts?
Yeah, so I think the idea that you go to America and they go through everything, your social media, open your laptop, look at that, see what you're thinking, I don't think is okay. But on the other hand, it's a democratic country. It's their rules. They should be able to do what they want.
It doesn't feel very democratic at the moment, though, does it?
Well, over 80 million people voted for that administration, and they knew what they were getting. I mean, for me, I'm trying to go to America at the moment. I want to go there at the end of the year.
Do you reckon you'll get in?
It's been difficult, right? Because I can't get a visa waiver because I've been to North Korea before.
And what's the reasoning behind that?
Well, there's a bunch of countries, North Korea, Cuba, South Sudan. There's a whole bunch who are seen as rogue states.
And if you go there, you're on the naughty list.
Well, not the naughty list. It means that I actually have to get a visa now.
Right.
So I guess the takeaway is be prepared. There's a chance that it won't be as easy as you once were. I've had great support from the consulate and the people that I ring up and helping out and things like that, but it has been stressful. And I think for a lot of people, going to America now just isn't as easy as it once was.
Well, I feel like, I haven't been to any of those red flag countries, but I do think that there is a reasonable chance that I could get stopped at the border because I am Indigenous, so I'm Māori and I'm a woman, and potentially strike number 3, I'm a journalist.
Yeah, but there are Indigenous female journalists going to America in and out all the time.
Are there?
With no problems.
So. Well, I hope so, because it's feeling a little bit worrying these days.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I'm not sure it's a straight path.
I think that's it in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
All these extra things that used to be so easy just to get on a plane and go to America, it's not anymore.
Yeah, well, the risk is you could get detained. Who wants to be sitting in one of their detention centres? And people are going in there on the most spurious grounds. So I don't know. I'm concerned about it, but I hope that you get in back.
Yeah,
I do hope
so do I.
All right, that is the elephant for this week. Remember, you can catch us on the New Zealand Herald homepage, YouTube, iHeart, and your favourite social media platforms.
The elephant in the room. Time to talk.
He te whānau, mauri ora.